Joining us now is Charlotte Swayze. She's a VP of Data and Polling for Data for Progress, and they're going to do something really interesting on election night. Charlotte, welcome to TYT.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So, what do you guys have planned for election night at Data for Progress? And I'll throw in the follow-up already. Why?
So, I'll do why first. So I've been working on election night reporting for a number of years now for campaigns as a vendor, sitting in windowless or otherwise boiler rooms, walking people through data as it comes in. And normally that's kind of my position. I'm half babysitter, half therapist, like half number cruncher. But this cycle, I started to notice that a whole bunch of people were looking at election results as they came in who would normally be, not doing that, not prone to hit refresh every 2 seconds. So at Data for Progress, we've put together a public dashboard and educational resource that you can find on our website that is our Election Night Integrity Project. So this is both a report on election results as they come in and also a resource to help people really understand and contextualize what they're seeing to help promote both understanding and sort of a calm read on results that can be really, really confusing if you're not sure what you're looking at.
Yeah, and I'll say for my part to the audience, look guys, the most important phenomenon is the difference between election night and all of the voting. So normally mail-in ballots are a part of what happens in an election, but not as significant and large a part as they are this time around with coronavirus and all the other things that have happened. So, and the mail-in ballots right now are coming in already, and they're coming in heavily Democratic from at least people registered as Democrats. So that is why Trump is talking against it, and that is why Trump in some of the swing states might have a lead on election night, but that lead could be illusory depending on how the mail-in ballots go and how quickly they're counted by the different states. So Charlotte, for the Election Night Integrity Project, what are you guys going to be tracking?
So we're tracking both early votes as they're cast. So we get records of how many ballots are in, but we don't get records of like how they're cast because they're not opened yet. And then on election night, we'll have records of votes as they're counted. So we won't get like what type of vote it is, but we will know how many have been cast and how they split out between the different candidates. So that'll be the main information that we're leaning on. And then we also have data on previous cycles, which is very helpful because it gives you intuition and information like this is typically a Democratic state. And if the early results lean Republican, that's probably more an accident of how they're counted than an actual result.
Yeah. And so that is very important. Also partly because Donald Trump is master of disinformation. So today, I think they were talking on Fox about, I think Trump was intimating that he could win New York. That's mental. So if you're not familiar with the way elections work in America and the different states, the Republicans have a 0% chance of winning New York in any national election in modern history. Donald Trump has less than a 0% chance of winning. But Charlotte, I don't know if it's more than zero though for him to have a lead on election night, even in blue states like New York. Is that possible?
That would be pretty unusual in New York. I also think that I don't want to overstate the variations in counting. We should fully expect states who kind of have it together and are usually pretty quick to have counted quite a lot of votes, even quite a lot of mail-in votes on election night. So Florida, for example, seems like it's going to come in pretty quickly. They have a really good system in place. Pennsylvania, probably a bit less quickly, a little bit more chaotic and subject to legal determination.
Well, that's really scary.
Even if we see these leads early in the night, like they will resolve pretty quickly.
So Charlotte, that's what we're all worried about, right? So let's talk about a little bit more about that. So in a state like Pennsylvania, if most of the day of voters are Trump voters, which is what it looks like it'll be now, but the huge majority of the mail-in votes are Democratic voters. if they could somehow get them to stop counting, that would be a massive win for the Republicans and for Donald Trump. So do you know of any effort on the Democratic side to make absolutely sure that every vote is counted and that the media doesn't freak out and declare Trump the winner as they did for George W. Bush in 2000, that made all the difference?
Yeah, so there's a number of efforts to make sure all the votes are counted. And also all of this fully depends on the exact order in which different boxes of votes are counted, which is very much subject to the jurisdiction of poll workers who tend to be lovely, civically engaged, older people who do genuinely want the election to go smoothly. So on the Democratic side, there are a number of efforts, including our partners. And then also there's more nonpartisan efforts like Vote America, who we've worked with, who are really pushing on this idea that like we do need to count every single vote, that there is no acceptable point to sort of cut it off. And I think you can see a success of this effort in the legal victories and legal battles that have been going on around these things. Like there's not been a ton of success as far as disallowing absentee votes, using these deadlines for mail-in ballots getting pushed back. So if they are postmarked by election day but arrive after, they'll still get counted. So there's a whole bunch of work going on this topic.
I hear you on that, but I'm still very worried because there's a couple of states that are disastrous. I mean, we saw what happened in Iowa, and so.
No, believe me, I was in Iowa. I fully remember. But you do have to know that did get resolved. Like it wasn't. There was this huge question mark, but the actual like determination of the winner of the race overall was determined eventually. We just needed to wait quite a bit longer than I think we would have liked.
I know,
so honestly, if the worst outcome here is we wait a few days, then I'll be pretty happy with that.
But how long did we wait in Iowa? My recollection was not days; it was weeks.
Yeah, no, it took quite a while.
Yeah, and so Bernie Sanders won Iowa. Buttigieg was near tie for first place, but Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden did not send in the militia to contest Iowa, and so it's a different environment. I mean, if Iowa takes weeks to decide who won the state this time around, that could lead to 1,000 different disastrous scenarios where the right wing. I mean, they did the Brooke Brothers mob back in 2000 in Miami-Dade. It was a bunch of lobbyists and Republican consultants that pretended to be a mob who was going to cause violence. In this case, they don't have to pretend. They got a lot of folks. So, do we have any idea whether Iowa has their act, in place now and can actually count it in a couple of hours or a couple of days? Or no, that's it for states like Iowa. We're just going to buckle up and wait for a couple of weeks and hope that the Trump doesn't steal it.
No, I think the states have done a huge amount of work and are really aware of the challenge that's going on this time around. Like we've seen huge efforts from election administrators and support for them from various organizations who are really invested in making sure this goes smoothly. My concern is much more that we're going to see confusion and overreading of early results, and not that we're not going to get results. I'm quite confident that we will get them. It just makes me nervous that people are going to look at 10 votes in one county that are oddly swung one way or the other and kind of make these very dramatic conclusions when they're really not justified.
Yeah, I want to be clear about two things. First of all, Charlotte's trying to help the situation by getting you guys the right information. And the website is 2020.dataforprogress.org. So I know on election night you'll be watching the Young Turks, of course, I say to everyone watching. But you could also check this website for more detailed information on the different states and this situation they're in. By the way, luckily, California is also a disaster. Luckily, it won't be in play. It's not contested. Biden will win within 1 minute.
Less a disaster and more just really slow.
Yeah, no, California is, I love California. I live in California. I hate it when the Republicans diss California and meanwhile are proud of Alabama and Mississippi. I can go on and on. But in terms of counting votes, California is the absolute worst. They just don't even bother counting it in a lot of the elections. They just stop counting. So I know I was involved in one, 77% reporting. 7 months later. They just never counted the last quarter of the votes. It's insane. So I hope you're right, Charlotte, that other states don't do that and won't do that. And I hope California doesn't do that, and they get their act in place. But okay, now for what you're doing, the project that you're doing, where you're trying to get people the right information, the audience is so important, the voters are so important. In the short time that we have, though, probably the most important is the media. And so I'm curious, since you interact sometimes with them, and you're trying to get them information, how open are they this time around? I mean, if you told me before that they were open to it, I wouldn't have believed you. And in 2000, they were the dumbest people on the planet, and they cost the planet dearly, and probably got 1 million people in Iraq killed because of their incompetence. Have they gotten better?
I think folks have been very open to learning and to being cautious. I think especially given the current environment, folks don't want to get burned by making a mistake because they didn't understand the results. And we are seeing that there are media operations that have a huge amount of in-depth experience. Our interest is really to be a double check and also to help people with different incentives contextualize what's going on and sort of push back on that effort to be first, to call it, to kind of overread, to predict, and have folks just wait for the votes to roll in and then look at the results once we kind of have the full picture.
Yeah, no, I love that there are folks like Charlotte out there and Data for Progress that are trying to contextualize it, get you guys the right information, and maybe most importantly, get the media the right information so they don't panic and call anything before all the votes are in. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.